Automation systems must continuously prove themselves as extremely reliable. The failure of a network component should be compensated as quickly as possible without affecting the communication of the other nodes. For this reason, industrial switches have various redundancy mechanisms for bridging faults quickly, reliably, and without loss of production. High-speed redundancy refers to an advanced redundancy method for industrial switches, which is also supported by scalance X switches. It protects networks with linear topology which, without redundancy, might fail completely. With high-speed redundancy, a wire break or component failure is compensated with the switches opening a second communication path through the network. In case of a fault, the communication is directed along this alternative path. The fault remains precisely limited to the failed component. The scalance X switches have between 4 and 26 inputs and outputs for communication. Each of these ports connects the switch with a network segment. The switches use address tables to perform their function, which is to direct the messages across the network via the quickest route between the sender and receiver. The port is stored in these address tables, via which each network node is connected with the switch. The address tables can be compared with a routing plan, which tells you from which track a train departs to which city. The address tables fill up as the switches analyze the incoming telegrams. Each network node has an imprinted worldwide unique address, the MAC address, which is entered into each telegram that is sent off. For each received telegram, the switch notes down its MAC sender identification together with the port on which the telegram was received. This enables the switch to assign a port or a network segment to each node. For high-speed redundancy, we are looking at a network which, in its most simple configuration, consists of a line from which the individual end nodes branch off. Each node of the line is equipped with a switch suitable for high-speed redundancy. The network may consist of optical as well as electrical segments, depending on the available ports of the switches. For high-speed redundancy, the line is closed into a ring. One of the switches in the later ring is configured as the redundancy manager. Two ports of the redundancy manager take on the ring monitoring. All other switches are subordinated to the redundancy manager by configuring two of their ports as ring ports. Subsequently, a physical connection from the redundancy manager to the other line end is established, which closes the ring. The required settings are preferably made via the web-based management. This is an intuitive user interface whose operation is familiar from the Internet. The ring is logically disconnected at the position of the ring redundancy manager. The regular communication is routed around the redundancy manager as if the ring was really a straight line. Its endpoints are the two ring ports of the redundancy manager. One of the two ports is referred to as active, the other one as passive. In addition to normal data traffic, the redundancy manager sends special multicast telegrams to the network via the active ring port at 10 millisecond intervals. These multicast telegrams are forwarded by the other switches until they reach the passive ring port of the redundancy manager on the other side. This way, the redundancy manager can monitor the fault-free functioning of the ring. A fault in the ring can occur in various forms. Possible causes are, for example, a wire break or a defective node. As soon as the fault occurs, the multicast telegrams, which the redundancy manager sends off, also no longer reach the passive port within the monitoring period. This immediately informs the redundancy manager of the failed connection. As a first measure, the redundancy manager closes the internal connection between its two ring ports. Now a logic connection between all nodes has been re-established. However, the switches still contain address tables which are no longer valid, and therefore they send their telegrams to the fault location. Using an appropriate delete telegram, the redundancy manager instructs the nodes in the ring to delete the old tables and to learn new values. Once the switches have updated their address tables, the communication is quickly restored. In a network with up to 50 nodes, for example, the reconfiguration is completed within less than 300 milliseconds after the disruption has occurred. The redundancy manager can now transmit the failure to the control center and initiate the replacement of the defective module. There are two ways to signal the defect. The notification occurs via the traditional signaling contact. Using this robust and reliable message system, the error can be electrically transferred to another device. Or the diagnosis is performed via an SNMP server. In the event of an error, in this more complex model, an alarm is triggered on a central monitoring PC, and the respective information is filed in a database. The functioning of the network is restored by these measures. With the exception of the failed components, all nodes can now communicate again with each other without any disruption. After the fault has been removed, the redundancy manager restores the original configuration. The ring, which is monitored via high-speed redundancy, may also be part of a larger network. This way, it is possible to interconnect office networks with redundant automation networks. If an automation network requires a guaranteed, highly available and fail-safe connection, the application of advanced redundancy mechanisms is imperative. High-speed redundancy, as provided by the switches of Symantec Net, bridges network disruptions very fast. A network with 50 nodes, for example, is repaired in less than 300 milliseconds. High-speed redundancy can be easily configured via web-based management and is very suitable for protecting extensive networks and subnets. The network nodes may, amongst others, include scalance X200, X300, or X400, optical switch modules OSM, and electrical switch modules ESM. High-speed redundancy works with 10 megabit, 100 megabit, and even with gigabit Ethernet. High-speed redundancy provides a flexible, extensive, and powerful protection for Ethernet networks.